I want to talk to you about something that I don't want to talk to you about. Strange? Yes, it is. This topic gets no stranger. Today I need to talk to you about the cost, the psychological cost of killing. The reason I need to talk about it is because we have been talking a lot here in the U.S. about arming teachers with guns so they could go out and they could protect our students. But what we don't talk about in all of that plan is what is the psychological cost that it would take for a teacher to be able to kill a student. So let's talk a little bit about that today. Not the funnest topic, but my hope is we'll make it interesting for you. Hi, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink, and welcome. Welcome back to My 5 Minds. This is where you're going to learn that your brain is not one thing, it's 5. And it works as a system. And sometimes it doesn't work as a system. And that's when we have problems. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today is a split that often happens in your brain on a lot of different things, but definitely a split that happens when we're talking about this really hard issue, killing. Your thinking brain and your emotional brain don't line up, and it takes practice and training to get those two to work together. So let me talk a little bit about what it costs, what it takes to kill. Now, let me start off. You're going to hopefully notice, or maybe you already noticed, that I'm going to be pacing a little bit more than usual because I do not like this topic. It's an ugly topic, but it's a necessary topic. And I also want to start off by letting you know my own biases, my own kind of history and experiences around this topic so you can understand that I'm not coming from this point of view of I hate guns, because I don't. Everywhere I go, I carry a gun. There's no place I go that I don't carry a gun. Now, could I use it? I don't know. To be quite honest with you, I am not sure. And the reason why I say that is because of some of the research that's out there around killing, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about. The other thing in my background I want to let you know about too is that my dad, my stepdad, was a hired assassin. He worked for the NSA. This is back years ago before George Bush kind of blew the whistle out on the NSA. This is back when the NSA was still, nobody knew there was an NSA. And he would go around the world and he'd kill people. And in fact, interesting thing, this is his actual briefcase. Is that cool? Did he actually use this in some of his contracts? Who knows? Interesting. But that's a side note. But what was interesting about him is he was just as mild and calm and normal of a guy you would have ever met. We always thought he sold insurance because he was just so laid back, so casual. Nothing was angry about him. Nothing was unusual about him. He didn't seem like he would hurt a fly. But as he was passing, as he was dying, he told us the stories. He told us what was going on. He told us his truth. And what he said was fascinating. What he said was that for him, there was no greater high. There was no experience. There was no drug. There was no anything that produced the same level of high excitement for him than taking somebody's life. Why? Because he's a trained killer. He has psychologically trained his brain for years to be able to take someone's life. And for him, it was a rush. But the truth is, for most of us, that is just not the case. One more tidbit about my background and history is I am an EAP, an employee assistance counselor for Coast Guard, police departments. I've done a lot of police training in terms of evaluating new cadets and seeing if they're appropriate to carry weapons. And I have seen it. I have seen it firsthand. I've worked with people firsthand on the devastation that it causes when an officer has to take a life. Because most people are not like my dad. Most people, we have a natural psychological resistance, and thank goodness, to killing. And when we do, and when we have to, there's a price. There's a huge price that we pay in terms of guilt, shame. Just, it breaks you. It breaks your spirit. So I want to talk a little bit about some of that. Now, a lot of what I'm going to look at, what I'm going to discuss today, comes from a book written by Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman. His book is called On Killing. It's a required reading for Quantico. It's recommended for the United States Marine Corps. It's the textbook. It's the handbook for the psychology of killing, of what it takes to be a killer. And what his research basically shows is, just like I said, probably only a third of us could actually pull a trigger. You could be trained, you can know how to use a weapon, you can carry a weapon with you, you can have lots of experiences with that weapon, but pulling the trigger is different. And here's why it's different. You always hear me talk about the 5 minds: thinking mind, creative mind, emotional mind, body mind, and conscious mind. Well, this is a classic thinking mind, emotional mind split. What I call TAB, the thought action barrier. We have all kinds of great ideas. And I don't mean just about carrying guns or anything like that. We have all kinds of great ideas. This year, I'm going to run a marathon. That's right. I'm running a marathon. That sounds great. I want to do that. I'm going to lose 50 pounds. I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to start my own business. Yeah, I want to start my own business. We have a ton of awesome, great, amazing ideas. And I hold them over here because this is where my left neocortex is. That's my thinking brain. And it's always thinking of awesome and amazing ideas. Now, there's a problem. Because your thinking brain, really for it to be able to be free to think, it has to be disconnected from emotions. So it can have free reign to process, to analyze, to look at, to evaluate things freely without any kind of bias. Now, the problem with that is that it can come up with conclusions, things you want to do, things that seem like a great idea, but there's no emotional reality to it. The thinking brain doesn't have any sense of what that's going to take. So if I'm going to run a marathon, I got to go through hours and hours and months of training. And that's going to take huge emotional commitment. And if my emotional brain is not on board, it doesn't like the idea of pain, then what's going to happen is that the emotional mind, which is far more powerful than your thinking mind, is going to shut the idea down. It's not going to happen. If I want to lose weight, go on this diet, that's a great idea. That's awesome. But if the emotions aren't hooked into it, if I'm emotionally not invested in that idea, it's going to shut it down. Want to start a business? That's awesome. That's great. Businesses are good things. But again, if there's emotional barriers inside of me, I'm scared, I feel inadequate, I have self-doubts, then the emotional part of that is going to shut it down. And the idea is never going to happen. Well, probably never in your life are these two further apart than on this issue. This particular issue of taking somebody's life. Your thinking brain may say, well, if I was in the right circumstances, if I was in the right situation where my family was being hurt, or somebody I loved was being attacked, or I'm being attacked, someone's breaking into my home, I would definitely pull out the gun and shoot them. And that's actually not the facts at all. Look at this shooting that just happened in Florida. The shooting that kind of has stirred a lot of this thinking of, well, let's arm our teachers. Well, in that school, in that very school, I know, there was an armed guard who had a weapon, who knew how to use the weapon, who was trained, and that was his job, was to protect the school and to protect the students. What happened? He couldn't do it. He couldn't go in there and confront the shooter. We call him a coward. We think, that guy, what a... Truth is, that guy's normal. That guy's you and me. In terms of the majority of us, most of us couldn't do that. Most of us wouldn't do that. Because it's not in our nature. Our emotional mind just wouldn't let us do it. Because it goes against who we are as human beings. And that's what happened. That's what you saw, is this guy just couldn't. Because he didn't have the psychological support and training to be able to do that. He knew how to use the weapon, but he didn't have any of the psychology. What does it take to be able to kill somebody? Well, basically you have to detach. You have to see that other person as the enemy, as less than you, as almost non-human. If I can see them as inferior, if I can see them as weak, or I can see them as somebody that's threatening to my world, I have to train my brain to take them out of the realm of humanity. And when I can do that, when I make these people not human, then I can do that. I can take them out. Because they're not really human beings. I'm not really going against my emotions because I've trained my brain to think of these people as less than. Part of the hard part of being an officer, being a police officer, is that you're constantly meeting people every day and you're constantly thinking of people in that way. That they are less than, that they're trouble, or that they sometimes scum, and that's the word that comes to mind. And that sounds harsh and that sounds awful, but it's the psychology you have to have if you have to pull the trigger. If you have to take somebody out, that's what you're going to have to think, is that they're not human, they're subhuman, because your brain won't let you do it otherwise. Now there's people out there that just do that naturally. There's people that think down of people. There's people out there that think everybody's less than them, and they think they're better than everybody else. They think everybody's subpar to who they are. And because of that, the psychology of theirs, they could probably do it. They could probably take a gun and shoot somebody. Especially if it was somebody of a different race and they felt like their different race was inferior to their race. Yeah, they could take them out. Because they're not really people. Now, imagine a teacher. Now, imagine being in a school and a classroom, and these are people that you're interacting with every day, that you love, that you are taking care of, that you are connecting to and helping. How is it going to work that you got to think in the back of your mind, today I'm helping Johnny, but Johnny's a little moody. Johnny's a little irritable. So I got to prepare myself. I got to think, okay, Johnny, I'm going to help you, but tomorrow I may have to kill you. How do you do that? Is that even possible to do that? No, there's no way. You can't hang around these students every day, love them, know them by name, interact with them as people you care about. And then the next day think, well, if they come in with a gun, I'm going to take them out. And that's probably what was happening with this guard, was that he knew all these students. He talked to these students every day, all the time. They were his friends. He was their friends. Hey. And then one day, a student brings a gun. What's he going to do? He can't change his psychology in that very split second of an instant to do what he needed to do. He knew these kids. He had relationships with these kids. He couldn't do it. Now, if some officer came in and didn't know these kids, didn't have a relationship with these kids, or maybe a SWAT member came in and they see this guy shooting other students, they can think, this guy's a bad guy. This guy's terrible. This guy's awful. This guy's not human. And they could probably take him out because they don't have a relationship with him. They don't know him. He's not a friend. He's not somebody they interact with every day. And so, boom, they can attack because there's this emotional distance and disconnect. That's what it takes. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or good or bad or any judgments on that whatsoever. I'm just saying that's what it takes to be able to pull a trigger. And I have to ask myself, because I carry a gun every day, could I do it? Could I do it? I think there's a cognitive dissonance in me. I think there's a part of me that says, I want to be prepared, but I don't think I can. I don't think I would. I don't know. I'd rather be prepared. That's just me. But I don't know. I'm not sure I really can, because I don't think that way. I don't feel that way towards people. I love people. So, I don't know. I pray. I never have to know. Right? All right. Thank you so much for watching this very difficult video. Difficult for me to make. I hope it wasn't so difficult for you to watch. But thank you again for checking this out. Again, I'm Brett, your favorite shrink, I hope still. And you've been watching My 5 Minds. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.